People hating them is unfair and honestly tedious. The worst unpopular opinions on the internet.
We should place a curfew forcing everyone to stay home at night.
Everyone should be forced to sleep or stay home at night. Yes, we can make exceptions for people running critical infrastructure, emergency services, national security, etc., but the majority of people should be confined to their homes at night. Why? The reasons are numerous. The majority of serious crime take place in the cover of night. Anyone caught outside after curfew would be arrested. A lot of health problems are caused by lack of sleep that the majority of people experience. This has a huge impact on our health services if everyone simply got enough sleep. People in general are overworked and forced to work long hours. That is not great for the human body but also for mental health. This would force employers to let their employees go home whenever the sun set. No more late nights. No more coming in extra early into work. But, by far, the most important reason is that this would solve the energy storage problem that we face if we want to switch to renewable energy and stopping climate change. If we simply didn't need to power most of our activities at night, we could switch most of our electricity generation to solar power. We wouldn't need to build giant, expensive, toxic batteries for nighttime power. We would all work only at daytime. We would build our products only during the day. Factories, malls, office building, and restaurants which use up 80% of the power we generate would all be closed at night. We could use wind, nuclear, and some fossil fuels at night to meet the remaining needs for residential and critical services. There is no such thing as an empath, and the people who call themselves empaths are not people endowed with some rare superpower. They're just empathetic. And there's nothing wrong with that. To be empathetic is to be human. Years ago, when I first found out about what an empath was, it was described as a rare fictional character that can experience other people's emotions, sort of like being clairvoyant, but with feelings instead of thoughts. We all benefit from empathy being a trait that is easy to come by in each other. You aren't an empath, you don't have any supernatural abilities to sense feelings in others, but you can relate to them, and you do care. That is enough. You don't have to be something that only exists in fairy tales. You can be real, and you can still be amazing. I posted this under this subreddit because so many people believe in empaths and think they are an empath, but nobody seems to share my viewpoint that they're misinformed. The term engineer should only be used for disciplines in which a professional engineer, PE, or equivalent designation is available, or the word engineer is on the degree. Just as you can't say you are a doctor if you don't have a doctorate degree, you shouldn't be able to call yourself an engineer unless you have a PE certification. Someone who repairs computers is not a computer doctor, and a life coach that functions as a de facto therapist is not a doctor in the same way that a PhD, PsyD, or MD therapist is. It is fraud to label yourself as a doctor if you don't have the proper credentials. Similarly, someone who sues someone else in small claims court is not an attorney, and someone who chooses a design for their house and hires a builder is not an architect. Engineers should have the same protections. If there isn't a PE certification, or international equivalent, in what you do, you shouldn't be able to use the term engineer, and companies shouldn't advertise jobs that are essentially maintenance workers or technicians as engineers. Similarly, software engineers are not engineers, unless they have an engineering degree. They do not have the same level of training in multidisciplinary fields that other engineers have. A degreed engineer in, for example, mechanical engineering has some fundamental training in electrical engineering, and vice versa, as these are accreditation requirements for an engineering program. Software engineers have no specific credentials whatsoever. The only person who should be able to call themselves a software engineer is someone who has an actual engineering degree and also happens to work on developing software. Being an extrovert is far worse than being an introvert if you're not actually cool. Everyone glorifies extroverted people as these social butterflies who have tons of friends and get attention from romantic partners. Or that they're able to use it to advance their career. Now yes, being extroverted helps with that, but what about the extroverts who people don't like? I'm extroverted in the sense that I am very outgoing, like to meet new people, and get energy from my interactions with others. Likewise, I get drained over time if I'm by myself for extended periods. So get this, I'm a loser, I'm not cool. When I try to make friends, most people will not be inviting me out to hang with them. I get turned down by friendships and dates alike. I spend most days alone, and it's suffering. Being an introvert helps if you're like me. You could find some peace and energy when you get a chance to go home and recharge. Not me. After a day of trying and failing, I get to go home and get more depressed. Doesn't feel like a blessing to me. Eating dinner at a dinner table at home is awkward and uncomfortable. Eating in the living room is superior. I find the awkward clinking of forks, the sounds of people eating, the forced conversation, and the fact that everyone is just facing inward staring at each other while watching each other eat, commenting on how much or in what order or what you do or don't eat, like. To be, you. Who thought that was a good idea? Why is that a tradition? I'd much rather sit around a sectional couch and watch something on TV or have music playing or something more casual. Heck, I'd rather stand in the kitchen around the stove and just take a few bites and leave the room instead of sit around a table and have dinner talk. Every day is an endless effort to make a good impression on those around me. Home is supposed to be a break. The last place I want to worry about looking good and appearing proper and being formal is at home, least of all when I'm just trying to eat. I hate the introvert trend. People seem to think that being introverted either means having typical social anxiety or depression, or acting like a snobby butthole who avoids people at all costs. And the best part is, they think it makes them interesting. I consider myself an introvert, I have anxiety, and yet, I know how to strike up a conversation and lead a small talk. It's a skill that you practice, like any other skill. That doesn't change the fact that I have to rest often after interacting with people, and that I prefer working alone. It's not other people's fault, I get worked up thinking about how I'm supposed to talk. It has a lot to do with my upbringing. Still, I don't get the need for literal adults to act like edgy teens in comments. Dude, half of the world is introverted. You are not unique if you ignore your relatives, you are just an butthole. Same goes if you ignore your friends' calls. You can't expect people to treat you well and understand your introversion when you ignore them. Statistically, a lot of people you are dealing with are also introverts, and they can also feel awkward and embarrassed to talk, but they reach out to you. You should wash your own laundry when you live with your parents. I didn't realize this was an unpopular opinion until I made a comment about it and a few people replied. Apparently the norm for teens and basement dwellers is to leave their dirty clothes in a basket until their mom or dad takes it away and washes it for them. Now I want to make it clear that if you're trying to save every dollar you can, and you're hurting for money, then yeah, doing your laundry in bulk and all together does save a few bucks, but for the majority of people the extra cost makes no difference. I've been loading washing, drying and folding my clothes ever since I was 12 and most of my friends have too, which is why I assumed this was the norm. It's kind of gross to have your parents wash your laundry for you, especially when you're a teen, because your hormones are all out of whack and you're jacking off 3 times a day and sweating buckets. You're really gonna make mom wash the cum sock? Not only does it save time if you just wash your clothes yourself since you aren't waiting for someone else to do it, and you don't have to sort through clothes afterwards, it also instills a bit of discipline and routine into you. It's like making your bed when you get up in the morning. Does mom make the bed for you also? You wash and put away your own dishes. You clean your own room. If you make a mess, you clean it up. Why is laundry any different? Now I know some parents don't want their children washing clothes, because they think their children are incompetent or for some other reason. However, I'm sure plenty of parents would be delighted if you took some responsibility for yourself and allowed them to relax or focus on things other than your sweaty t-shirts. I wish people would start calling this decade the 20s already. I'm old, for the internet, mid-40s, so I feel like I should explain some history here for people who are too young to have this context. People are feeling a lot of nostalgia for the 1980s and 1990s, but what you may not realize is that referring to those decades as the 80s and the 90s isn't something that only started happening after the fact. Back in the 80s and 90s, people used those terms constantly. In 1992, you'd probably hear somebody say the 90s every day, maybe multiple times a day. What did you expect? It's the 90s. Nirvana is the band of the 90s. This is the 90s way to trim a beard. This was an actual TV ad. When 2000 rolled around, there was no obvious name for the new decade. I remember reading an article circa 2000 speculating that we'd all settle on a name soon, and then another around 2005 lamenting that it hadn't happened yet but expressing confidence that we'd come up with one in the very near future, because we had to refer to the decade by a name, right? That's just what you do. And then it didn't happen. I was hopeful in 2010 because even though there was still no obvious name, it seemed more likely that we'd adopt something. The tens? The teens? But I guess the most obvious possibilities were still too awkward, and it didn't take long before I realized we'd have to wait another 10 years. Now it's the 20s. The 20s. But nobody is saying it. Why not? I guess that as a society we just kind of forgot that's what you do? The weird thing, though, is that we're talking way more today about how things are changing than we were in the 80s or 90s. But you never hear remote is the 20s way to work, or masks, the fashion accessory of the 20s, or will America make it past the 20s? I complained about this to somebody a while back, and she speculated it was because the 20s means the 1920s to us. But I don't buy it. In 1989 the 90s was commonly understood to mean the 1890s, and we still used it when 1990 came. We're almost 3-4 years into the 20s. Can we start doing this already? Seagulls are really cool and interesting birds. I like their voices. People hating them is unfair and honestly tedious. There's a bird out there that is equally at home on land, in the air, and in the sea, common enough for nearly all of us to observe, smart enough to learn to bait fish with bread and adapt to nearly any city on Earth, which has a pretty cool and interesting voice once you get over how overplayed it is. And most people's only opinion on them is that they would happily see them all disappear just because they, like 95% of humans, go crazy for fried potato? I just think the way most people talk about seagulls is a really joyless take on the situation, even though yes, like most people, of course I've had them steal my food sometimes. One of my favorite sights is seagulls existing in the few natural environments they have left to them, diving for fish and exercising their outstanding flight agility on an ocean wind. Go look at a seagull managing to hover dead still in a strong wind, genuinely think about how the hell they manage that, and allow some wonder to enter your life. Nearly every problem people have with them is in reality just a problem with our own terrible trash management and the way we've monopolized high-value waterways. I did also live in Australia and leave with Australian magpies as one of my favorite birds ever, so I'm aware underappreciated birds might be a thing I'm that guy about. Teenage customers who pay deserve the same respect as adult customers. I, a working woman in my 20s, have always recognized how differently young teenagers are treated in retail stores and especially in food establishments. I have heard stories and seen reviews about paying teenagers going into a store and being treated awfully with no respect. Even I remember a situation years ago when I went out to eat, ordered fries, and when I received them I found a black hair in my food. I'm blonde. When I told the waiter they looked at my and replied so what? And walk off. As a young teenager this shocked me because it already took a lot for me to even speak up on the situation. Years later I always hear about stories about teenagers getting treated poorly in customer service environments when they are also just as equally paying customers, especially when they've been nothing but respectful in the environment. I understand when kids are rude it's a different situation, but when they've been nothing but a standard, peaceful customer and are still treated poorly, I just don't get it. Did you think these opinions were actually unpopular? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And subscribe to the channel to be exempt from your curfew. If not, you will only be able to access YouTube for an hour a day.